You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. This episode is brought to you by NY Beauty Suites, a shared rental and retail space designed specifically for beautypreneurs and wellness professionals. Founded by Joanne Briere, NY Beauty Suites is the first private workspace option for state-licensed and insured beauty and wellness professionals in New York City with 2 premier Brooklyn locations. The shared flexible workspace features services like hair, makeup, facials, braiding, waxing, etc. In addition to these services, NY Beauty Suite offers suites ranging in size from 96 to 500 square feet for rent by the hour, daily, or monthly. Each rental includes professional cleaning, sanitation procedures, utilities, Wi-Fi, and 24-hour access to a secure building. Also, if you're a content creator, it's the perfect space to ensure you have everything you need to create jaw-dropping content with their all-inclusive photography and podcast studio. Visit nybeautysuites.com to learn more about NY Beauty Suites and how you can make it your home for working and innovating. Welcome back to another episode of the Black to Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and today's episode is extra special. I know I say that about every episode, but today's episode is actually extra special because it is another solo episode. So if you've been following Black to Business for some time, you will know that the last and first time I ever did a solo episode was in the end of 2021, our last episode of 2021. If you haven't checked that out, be sure to check out episode number 76. And during that episode, I talked about a 2021 year in review for Black to Business. And I spoke about some of the things we're working on at Black to Business, some of the things that really went well for Black to Business in 2021, or some of the things that we wanted to continue to grow in and do better at. So check that episode out for more about that topic. But I thought today would be a perfect episode to do a solo episode because it's the end of Women's History Month. If you've noticed, we've been highlighting Black women in business all month. So this episode is to end the roundup of women in business. I'm a woman in business, and just to talk about a topic that I think is very important to talk about as I meet more entrepreneurs, as I grow as an entrepreneur. One of the things that continues to show up is that we all want to grow and we all have these goals for our business and they spill over into our personal lives. But what it really requires is us getting uncomfortable for that growth in order to reach our goals. So today I really want to talk about getting uncomfortable. And I've been calling this year an uncomfortable year for me, and in a good way. So I want to talk about what does that mean. So getting uncomfortable, it simply means having more courage to do the things that you need to do to take your business and life to the next level. Because we are doing business to serve a need for others, but in return, we also have to live a life that we want. We also have to make sure that we are creating a life that we want in the midst of running and growing our business. So I'm doing an episode on this topic because we are coming up on a new quarter. It's the top, or kind of the top of 2022. It's still early, and you all have some goals. I have some goals that I want to reach, and I want you to know that you still have time. But I also want you to know that in order for you to reach those goals, you're going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm calling this the uncomfortable year, and I am asking everyone to join me on this journey this year to be uncomfortable in order to reach those goals. So I want to talk about why you have to get uncomfortable. So one of the things is we all have these grand goals for our life and business. And a lot of times what is stopping us from reaching those goals is that fear. It's those mental blocks that we're facing. But we have to understand that if this fear is consuming us, if these mental blocks is consuming us and paralyzing us, we're going to be in the same place next year. So you don't want that to happen. That's why it's important for you to get uncomfortable. And another reason is that if you are not getting uncomfortable, you're actually stunning your growth. You're actually doing a disservice to the industry that you're in because you're not allowing your business to be the best that it can be. You are in the way of the growth that your business needs, and we cannot have that. And another thing that I want to talk about is that what I noticed in entrepreneurs that I speak to so many entrepreneurs, I meet so many entrepreneurs, and I've personally experienced it. And it's a lot of fear, as I said before. So what I really did one day is I sat back and I said, what is really the definition of fear? And I just looked it up on Google. And one of the things that came up was that fear is the most general term, and it implies anxiety and usually a loss of courage. So I started to think and I started to put things together. I said, well, in order to be a business owner, I always tell people that you have to enjoy the process, and you also have to enjoy the small moments and celebrate the small wins. But you also have to realize that you are courageous in that you're doing something that a lot of people don't have the courage to do when it comes to starting a business. A lot of people are not even thinking about starting a business, or a lot of people are thinking about starting a business, but they're scared. So especially if you've already started your business, you had that courage to start. You had that courage to put yourself out there. So what happens if you don't continue to practice that muscle, to exercise that muscle of being courageous? It's a loss of courage, and that's that fear. So that fear is what's going to stunt your growth. And in order for you to do what you need to do in your business, you have to get over these fears. You have to get uncomfortable, because a lot of times what's happening is that very thing that we need to do is on the other side of our comfort zone. So that's why I'm saying I am challenging everybody to get uncomfortable this year. And it might look like, you protecting your calendar. It might look like you saying no to certain opportunities that are not in alignment with that business goal that you have. And that's sometimes an uncomfortable conversation that you might need to have. But again, this year is all about being uncomfortable, because you have to reach the goals that you have for your business. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in the same place next year. So I know it's easier said than done. So what I want to encourage you to do is get into the habit of building that capacity to be uncomfortable, building that muscle to say, okay, this is the thing that's making me nervous. I'm acknowledging that. This is the thing that I'm scared about. I'm acknowledging that, but I understand that it's more important for me to do this thing because it's more important for me to reach this goal in my business. It's more important for me to be impactful in my business. And in order to be those things, I have to get uncomfortable to do that very thing that I'm scared of. These are the reasons why you have to get uncomfortable. Now, I'm saying all of these things, and I want to tell you some of the things that I did to become uncomfortable and how I am practicing being uncomfortable. So on these podcast episodes that we've had, we're up to episode number 88. And a lot of times I love having these conversations. And during these conversations, I'm being enlightened as well. Sometimes I'm learning a lot just from these conversations. But one of the things that I learned from one podcast episode in particular was episode number 74 with Zaylee Barkley. She talked about how to use video content to grow and sell in your business. Well, grow, market, and sell in your business. And we all know that video is the new wave. Every time you turn around, it's a new reel. It's some kind of video, some kind of introduction of something that deals with video. So we all know it's not going anywhere. Now, one thing I do know is that as business owner, we cannot hop on every trend. But as most of you probably realize is that you have to realize what's good for your business, what's going to work for your business. Is this something that I want to implement in my business? So again, understanding that video content isn't going anywhere. It's the new wave, and some people are going to have to implement it in their business. And I realized that it was one of those things that I would have to implement. I had been thinking about it for a while in Black to Business. So I had to take a step back, and I had to think about, as business owners, we do, why is it important for me to do this in my business? Why is it important for me to use video content in my business? And I said in that episode, I'm referencing the episode I did in 2021 review. One of the things I really wanted to work on this year was more exposure for Black to business, but also continue to set us as that expert, that resource for startups. And I understood that the power of video would do these things for my business. So I understood that it would establish us as the expert. It would also allow us to provide value to our audience. So I realized, I said, okay, if this is something that I'm going to implement, I know it's important for my business. And again, I'm giving you all a breakdown of how I walk through this process of being uncomfortable and just some of the ways that I'm practicing it. I have other goals and things that I'm working on, but this is just one of the examples that I'm using for today. But I realized, okay, this is something that I want to implement in Black to Business. I know it's important. And so how can I create a plan around doing this? And so what I did was I took a step back and I said, okay, this is what the plan should look like. I went through Zaylee, what she talked about in the episode, and I said, okay, I want to make sure that I'm providing value. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to implement this, I want to make sure that I'm doing it the right way, which is providing value so that I can be an expert in the space, so that we can make sure that people are coming to us for business tips and resources. So what I did was I took a plan and I said, okay, maybe the first time I'll do it, but I'll still be nervous. But again, I wanted to practice being courageous. I wanted to get over and build that habit of being courageous and getting over that mental block. So I said, just doing it the first time won't work. I need to continue to build it and work on this and make it like work this muscle basically. So I said, maybe the second time I won't be where I want to be. So I said, maybe what I'll do is I'll put it out there and I'll create this plan and I'll tell people about it, and that'll make me do it, because I'm the type of person that if I say I'm going to do something, especially when it comes to business, I do not like going back on my word. I like to show up however and whenever and what time I said I was going to show up. So what I said is like, okay, the first time I'll be nervous if I do it. The second time I'll be nervous if I do it. And I need to build this muscle. I need to continue to be courageous. And I keep saying to myself when I'm having these negative thoughts or this fear, again, going back to fear is usually loss of courage. I tell myself, be more courageous, Monique. Be more courageous. So sometimes what you have to do in these moments that you're feeling uncomfortable or fearful, you have to have that positive self-talk. You have to reassure yourself that you can do this. And so what I did was I created a plan and I said that the goal is to provide value. If I'm going to do this, I want to provide value. So I created a plan and said, you know what? I'm going to stick to doing this for 30 days. I want to do it for a month. Okay, if I'm going to do it for a month, how often can I show up for a month? So I said, you know what? We do the podcast every week. Why don't I just show up? And I always talk about, I believe in providing value on a weekly basis. So I said, maybe what I'll do is I'll show up every week on video. And I'll do it on my private page, on my personal social media. So if you aren't following my personal social media, it's Monique T Marshall on Instagram. So I said, I'll do it on my personal social media. And I'll commit to showing up every week and providing value for my audience. So what I did was I created a plan, just like we show up every week on Black to Business podcast on Thursdays. I said every week I'm going to show up on Instagram and my personal Facebook page on Tuesdays. And I'm going to show up at 12 o'clock p.m. And so I put this out there. I did a test run with it, and I let people know that I would be showing up for the entire month of March every Tuesday. I think I did this in the last week of February, and I let people know beforehand. I'll be showing up every week on Tuesdays at 12 o'clock. So I'd already put it out there. So I'm like, okay, I got to do it. I was scared. I said, I got to do it. It's uncomfortable for me. It's new for me. I've never been on video. And what happened is I put that out there and I started to show up in both places. So I did 12 o'clock on Instagram and I did 1 o'clock on Facebook. So I was like, if you miss me on Facebook, on Instagram, you can catch me on Facebook. And I put this out there and let people know I'll be showing up on both places. So what I did was I did that for 2 weeks. And what I started to look at was that I started to look at the numbers. I started to look at the engagement on both platforms. Because again, during this process, I'm saying I want to show up and provide value, but I also want to know where is my audience? I'm testing if I'm going to be on video, where is my audience going to be? So I put it out there, and for 2 weeks, I got people on. I noticed that I created a whole new Instagram page. So I had small followers. So I had created a new Instagram page, and I didn't have as many followers. But what I've noticed just in being in business is that the reason why I did that is I wanted to make sure that my audience who were going to be following me were following me because they were my ideal customer avatar. They were my ideal community. So I began to understand early on when I started this page that I don't need 1 million followers. I just need to have those solid followers. So here you have someone with a low amount of Instagram followers on their personal page, but you have how we have family from high school classmates and family on Facebook. So I'm thinking they're going to convert into my customers. But what I noticed during that 2 weeks is people were showing up, but they weren't on Facebook, but they weren't my ideal community. And what I quickly realized is that, okay, Monique, you have to take a look at the numbers because you're already doing something that's uncomfortable and you want to provide value, but you want to also make sure that you're making the best use of your time. So when you're doing something that's uncomfortable, look at the data, look at the results, look at what this thing is producing, really pay attention to that to let you know if it is worth your time. And again, I practice it for 30 days because I do think that it does take time to complete things. So here I am, this person that doesn't like going back on their word, this person that once they put it out there, they're going to do it. But then what I started to realize is that those people that were showing up on Facebook were not my audience. I was getting more engaged. I had less followers on Instagram, but I was getting more engagement there. And I was creating plans. I was talking about a different business topic every week. I had already let them know. And I had, at this point, second week, I was becoming a little more comfortable. So I was like, okay, this is working. I know that this is helping me get over that uncomfort. I know that this is helping me with being more courageous because I want to show up on video. But then also I realized it wasn't working for me on Facebook. But how do I tell these people that the best business decision would be for me to convert to only showing up on Instagram and showing up as my best self there? So I said, this is going to be uncomfortable for me to let people know that I'm no longer going to be showing up on Facebook. I'm only going to be showing up on Instagram. And I've already told them that I'm going to show up, and I'm already that type of person that don't like going back on my word. So I'm facing two situations where I'm uncomfortable. I'm already getting on video, but now I'm having to tell people that I changed my mind. And what really made this decision easy for me is I began to think about what's best for my business. And that helped me make that decision to say, I'm going to make this announcement to let people know I will no longer be showing up on Facebook, but I will be showing up on Instagram. If you are not following me, because Instagram was where my audience was, I said, if you're not following me on Instagram and you're interested in learning more about business startup tips, be sure to follow me at such and such. And what I began to see was those people that wanted to be a part of learning about entrepreneurship, they knew me from Facebook, but they were like, okay, she's not going to show up here. I want to hear what she has to say. So I'm going to show up on Instagram for her. And so I mention this because sometimes in the midst of being uncomfortable for growth, we realize other things about ourselves, or that sometimes those things that we think are going to deter people or seem bad are really not that bad. People are so much more understanding when you're transparent with them. And during this whole process, what I was doing was I was letting people know that I was kind of taking people on this journey. Hey, this is something that I'm doing for the first time. The same way I mentioned in my 2021 review that this was a solo episode. But I really realized that, hey, this is something that I'm doing for the first time. This is my first live. And that support was there. And then during the midst of that, I had people showing up every week. I had people who showed up every week consistently. I had new people show up. But it was also during this time that I actually got feedback from people, and they were saying, okay, I love this uncomfortable year thing that you're doing. And what I began to ask people was on the live, I kind of like made it fun. I said, hey, what is something that you did uncomfortable this month or this week? And, if you have a goal, join me on this journey. I have a goal to show up, get over my fear of showing up live. Maybe it's something that you want to work on. Join me on this journey and let's hold each other accountable. So showing up every week and letting me know what's something that you did uncomfortable last week, or so we can talk about it. But that is some of the ways that I practice being uncomfortable. And then I want to talk about some of the results that I got from that. So one of the things is I showed up every week on during the month of March, every Tuesday. And what I began to notice is that it became easier over time. And then I realized I thought it was going to take me 2 lives. After that first live, I realized, this isn't so bad. So that's why I encourage you, if it's something that that is a goal that you have in your business, do that very thing that makes you nervous, because what you'll realize is that most times it's not as bad as you thought it would be. Or most times people are more understanding if it's something that you're doing that's maybe like showing up as content or a new product or whatever it is. But people are more understanding than you think, as long as you're being transparent with them in that process. If not, sometimes people are not even thinking that hard. Even if you don't make that announcement, it's like people are not thinking about it. It's so many people showing up live that they're like, oh, this is something that they're doing new. And they may not even be able to tell that you're nervous. So that was some of the great feedback that I got, but it helped me get that courage to show up. And it helped me create that style to say, okay, I'm no longer nervous about showing up live. I've gotten over that. Now I just want to work on what's my style going to be? And so what I realized is, and Zaylee talks about this in episode 74, just, the points. I took a lot of the tips that she has. Every week I showed up with 3 important points that I wanted to go over, and I kept that routine and I kept being consistent at that. And I realized that being consistent helped me become comfortable with that uncomfort. So my uncomfortable moment became comfortable. And I realized, maybe I won't show up every week. I said, I'm going to do it for 30 days, but maybe I won't show up every week for the rest of the year. But what I will do is maybe one of my new plans might be to show up every quarter weekly to provide value on video. That was just one of the ways that I really exercise and practice being uncomfortable. And there were certainly many other goals that I have for Black to Business, for myself. And one of those things included also getting more exposure. I talked about that on the 2021 review episode. And what that looked like to me was getting more interviews, more media, more press. And I learned a lot of those tips from the past episode with like Sakita Holly, from Samantha, starting to get PR without a publicist, and just starting to implement some of those things. And one of the goals that I also set was to get a speaking engagement for Q1. And I wanted to get one speaking engagement. Well, putting things out into the atmosphere and actually putting it into work and getting uncomfortable. What actually happened, I want to talk about now, leading into some of the results that I got from being uncomfortable. I actually got 3 speaking engagements in 1 month. And my first paid speaking opportunity. So again, I'm sharing this to say that I am a prime example and using myself as an example of the results that we can get once we set those goals and once we commit to being uncomfortable and having more courage, the results that come from that. And not only this, one of the things I also spoke about is, increasing podcast sponsorship. I was able to get my first sponsor and really pitch, with pricing and everything, be confident in my pricing for Black to Business and really pitch that to a sponsor. So this month we actually got our first sponsor and we're working on getting another sponsor for the Black to Business podcast, but honestly keeping that momentum up. And one of the things I'll say is that as I begin to do this more, it gave me more confidence to do other things that were uncomfortable for growth. So again, I'm using these as these examples to let you know my own story, and hopefully that it'll encourage you about today's topic, really getting uncomfortable for growth for your business in order for you to reach those goals that you have for yourself. And I just want you to understand that nothing beats a failure but a try. So most importantly, I learned that I'm capable of doing uncomfortable and hard things. And again, this kept and gave me the courage to keep going and then to keep producing results. So I've given you all of the things that work for me, and I wanted to let you know some tips for you to get uncomfortable and kind of walk you through my process. So one of the first things I'll say is that you first have to envision the life that you want. You really got to paint a clear picture. And then you start to think about, what will it take for me to get there? What do I need to do? Who do I have to become in order to create or live this life or create these results in my business? And then from there, what you'll begin to do is you set goals and start working on goal setting. So I want to give you some tips for goal setting. So one of the things that I've noticed working in business and with entrepreneurs is that a lot of times what makes us uncomfortable is that fear of that big goal. So we have this grand goal in our head. We have this overarching goal, and sometimes it can become intimidating because a lot of us are thinking about what this big goal is, that we become paralyzed with fear because we're like, oh my God, this is so grand. And we don't think about the small steps that it takes to get to that big overarching goal. So what I encourage people to do is, when it comes to goal setting, you have this big overarching goal for your business. It could be overarching goal for your whole business, or it can be an area in your business that you want to work on. And so what you want to do is you want to start to work backwards. So what I encourage people to do is to say, if you have a big goal for your business, I would say look at it from a 3-year standpoint. Because I say 3 years because business, as you know, is always changing. Things are always evolving. Things are always being introduced. There's so much innovation going on that what's popular in 2 years ago may not be popular in 2 more years. So we know that business is always changing, and that we also have to pivot sometimes and change with the times, what I say is look at a 3-year goal. And then from your 3 years, what you want to do is work on your annual goals. And then from annual goals, what you'll do is work on your quarterly goals. And from your quarterly goals, you'll go monthly and weekly, et cetera, et cetera. So however you choose to break it down. But I say have that 3-year goal and then work backwards from there, so it doesn't seem so intimidating. And then you start to create those goals. And then what you'll do is say, what do I have to, because today's conversation is all about being uncomfortable to reach those goals. What do I have to do that is uncomfortable in order for me to reach this goal? And then you start to write that thing down and work on doing that very thing that is uncomfortable in order for you to reach those goals. For example, me being an expert in my business was important, so that meant showing up and adding value consistently. And what I did was I did this by breaking up. This is something that I wanted to work on this for the quarter. So what I did was I broke it up into a month, and then I broke it up into a week. So I said each week I'm going to do showing up live every week in order to get over that uncomfort, but also to reach that goal of becoming the expert in my industry, the go-to source in my industry. So I work backwards that way. And you can do what you feel is necessary for you and your business. Again, this is a suggestion, but I really, really, really encourage you to break it down this way so that you don't become stifled by fear. And then the next step is, so you got these goals that you have, and you're going to practice on being uncomfortable. So how do you stay on track? How do you stay accountable? And I'm going to share with you some of the things that work for me. So for example, another goal of mine was also to be consistent on showing up with content, creating content. So what I began to do is I began to surround myself and tap into my network and say, okay, who else is working on this? And one of the tips I would say is making sure that you're surrounding yourself with a solid tribe. And so what I did was I found people who were looking to do the same things that I was doing. And I communicated with them. These are my goals. This is how I would love to help you in your business, but also how you can help me. And what we did was we formed an accountability group. So what you can do is, in order to find your solid tribe, is work on having those people in your circle who can hold you accountable. So what I did was I partnered with these amazing women, and we call ourselves the Content Squad, but we also all contribute different things. And what we began to do was create content together, have clarity meetings together, so many things. But it was a space that I knew I needed. So that really helped me to create content consistently. So that's what I would say for you. If you feel that your immediate circle is not helpful, look to people who are maybe on the internet, who are in local groups or communities, and just really share with people what your goals are. And you will be surprised to find that there are many people who are looking to do the same things that you're doing, or you can also leverage those relationships to create and reach those goals that you have for yourself. So I say create a solid tribe. And then from there, one of the things that you can do is to stay on track is to protect your time and calendar. The way that I recommend people protect their time and calendar is by writing out your goals and then putting them on a calendar and planning them. So I know a lot of people have digital planners or digital calendars that they rely on. My next step is recommending a physical planner, because when you write things down and you cross off things, as Gina Alert mentioned on one of the past podcast episodes, you really see what you get done in a day. But also this is important to mention, because when it comes to protecting your time, if you have your goals written down or scheduled in your calendar, what this says is that when people, because if you don't have plans, people will come over, they will come in and take over your plan, and they'll take over your day, and you end up doing something that you didn't even plan doing. The way that you stop this from happening is by scheduling things. And then when someone tries to come in and they try to, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Or would you mind doing this? And you say, no, I can't do that. I already have something scheduled. And you're not lying, because you've already written these things down on your calendar. And what that says is you've prioritized getting this thing done so that you are able to reach that goal that you have. So that's one of the ways that I recommend that you use to stay on track, is by protecting your time and calendar. If you have a digital calendar, I do seriously encourage you to get a physical planner. Another important tip for staying on track is that you have to create healthy habits when it comes to time management. And one of the ways that I recommend doing this is with something that I practice personally that has worked for me, is using the Pomodoro technique. And basically what this is you get a timer. You can use your phone or an actual timer. I like to use an actual timer because I know myself, and I know that I can get distracted by my phone. So what I did was I went on Amazon and I bought an actual timer, small timer. But basically what you do is you set a timer for 25 minutes and you work through a particular task, or you call that your focus time, with no distractions for 25 minutes. And after that 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and you do this for 4 times in a row. And on that 4th time, what you do is you take a longer break. Maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes. But I found that this is very helpful for creating a great healthy habit when it comes to time management, but also staying on track when it comes to deadlines and getting those important tasks done with no distraction, because it almost feels like a game. You're like, I got to do this with no distractions. So that's something that I live by, is the Pomodoro technique. And then another thing that you also have to remember when it comes to staying on track is that you really owe it to your audience, your consumers, to be the go-to source. So you have to continue to grow. You have to continue to evolve. And honestly, a requirement of this and growth and evolving and evolution is that you have to be uncomfortable, because this means that you're stretching yourself to reach that next level. So I encourage you to do whatever is necessary for you to reach that next level. And most times you'll find that you have to get uncomfortable to do so. So one of the things that I am asking that you do in order to make this an uncomfortable year is, 1, realize that it's not too late to get back on track. Again, the start of the new quarter is about to start, and you can always get back on track. If you find yourself getting off track, do so by using some of these things that I gave you, these tips that I gave you, but also really practice being uncomfortable, because one of the things you'll realize, and I say this to myself, is that it's not that bad and you're not going to die. Like, you're not going to die. If you're doing something that's uncomfortable, that's going to be growth for your business. If it's like putting that pitch, sending that email that needed to be sent, you're not going to die after you press send. I promise you, you won't. So I am encouraging you to do something uncomfortable until you reach the goal that you have set. And if that is an annual goal that you set, do something uncomfortable every week until you reach that goal. If it's a next week goal, do something uncomfortable every day until you reach that goal. And if you want to share with me, as I mentioned before, my personal Instagram is Monique T Marshall, or you can send me an email at monique@blacktobusiness.com. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for supporting the Black to Business podcast. Thank you so much for having the courage to do what you do and add value to our community, and know that everything that you are doing is necessary. See you next week, family.